I'm blanking on the word. But things I have seen in classrooms, four things that I love, four things that I not so much. All right. Hello, my name is Leslie Nelson. If you're new here, I am an 8th year teacher in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm a reading specialist. And today's going to be a little different. This is going to be classroom like trends, features. I don't know, classroom like I'm blanking on the word. But things I have seen in classrooms, four things that I love, four things that I not so much. Again, this is my opinion. This is my opinion based on my experience as a teacher. So if you don't agree, cool. If I say something, I don't like it, and you do it in your classroom, great, keep doing it. I am one person and I only make decisions for my room. I need a coffee break, but all right. So, four things I like, four things I don't like so much. We're going to start with things I'm not a fan of. So, the first one that I'm not a super huge fan of is the affirmation station where it's like a mirror and you've got the things around it that's like, I am kind, I am brave, that sort of stuff. So, the reason I'm not a fan of like the affirmation station is because I guess personally, I don't see kids using it. I don't see kids like standing in front of the mirror and repeating that to themselves in their classroom in front of their peers unless they have been like taught to do that from like a very young age and they do it at home. I also am just not a fan of like generic motivational decor. That's another like thing of mine, just in general, the like generic. I don't know. I'm not a fan. It feels very corny and it feels maybe more performative than like how a kid actually feels in a classroom. But again, just my opinion. But I'm just not a fan of the affirmation stations. They're not something that I have ever done in my room or something I foresee myself doing in the future. Um, the second trend that I'm not a super huge fan of, and this one I feel is going to cause some riffs. I am not a fan of calm down corners in a gen ed classroom. I understand they have their time and place, usually in an ED classroom or an SER classroom or whatever you call children with behavioral needs. I understand like having calm down rooms and like things like that for kids who do need that outside regulation. However, in a gen ed classroom, I'm not a fan of them for a few reasons. Number one, they're usually very public. If I was a child struggling to like calm down and control myself, the last place I want to be is a corner where everyone can see me having a problem. I also don't like it because that is very school specific. The goal is we want to be teaching these kids like calm down strategies and techniques they can apply outside of their life, like outside of their school lives in their everyday life. Nowhere else is going to have a calm down corner. I would rather give kids the tools to be like, okay, you're clearly upset and you feel like you need to remove yourself. Where would be a good place to remove yourself to? Do you want to sit in that chair? Do you want to go crawl under a desk? Like, I feel like that is a much more useful tool because every kid's going to want something a little different. They're not all going to want to go sit in the same corner when they're kind of having like a really big emotional, like trying to deal with that. So I feel like having tools available, like having timers, having the cards to remind them of what they can do, I've got my like fidget toys, having that stuff available, but then teaching them grab what you need and put yourself where you need to be is a much more valuable skill. All right, number three. This one is going to be, again, a little divisive. Growth mindset decor. I don't hate growth mindset. I think teaching kids to have a growth mindset is very important, and I think it's a very good thing to do. I think growth mindset has like a lot of things, teachers have taken a hold of it, and it's getting to the point now where it's almost crossing the toxic positivity, um, where it's like we're basically nicely saying like you have to do it, you have to struggle through it, and like I feel we're crossing into a place of like I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with the direction a lot of growth mindset stuff is headed. I think the idea of like teaching kids to not just shut down immediately, that's obviously important. But this idea of like when a kid is struggling and you're just sitting there going, you can't do it yet, you're free, like that's not going to help a kid who's struggling and starting to get overwhelmed by the struggle. That's when you like, there needs to be a good balance between like, yeah, you're struggling, but keep persevering. And hey, you need like, we're really struggling. Let's step away for a bit. Let's do something else. And I know that is a part of growth mindset, but it's the way that it's like constantly, like we're almost constantly on kids. It feels almost pushy, and I'm not a fan of that. And a lot of the growth mindset like posters and decor I've seen, I feel is very, it kind of goes along with like the generic motivational stuff that I've seen, but it also just, it feels like, I feel like at some point kids aren't paying attention to it, and it just is pushing something that just isn't helpful for kids. And the last one, this one is, I think, to a point, desk fairy. Now, desk fairy, I think it's like for little kids, sure. I view it kind of like as Elf on the Shelf, where it's like, I don't like the idea of like teaching kids that like, oh, you need to have a clean desk so that desk fairy will reward you. Like, no, we keep our stuff clean because that's how we stay organized and that's what's expected of us. I especially don't like when the desk fairy like leaves prizes. And I have done this in the past. I have 100% now. I've done it where I'm like, I'll tell my kids the desk fairy's coming, and they're like, they know it's me, like it's a joke. But still, like giving out prizes for having like an organized desk and things like that, I don't like that. And I've done it in the past. I am I am not free of this either, but I'm just not a fan of this idea of like something is watching you and that's why you have to follow expectations. I think it's not helpful, and it also teaches kids like hyper surveillance, which is not great. All right. Those are the four things I don't like. Now on to four things I've seen that I do like and I try to incorporate in my room. So first of all, ASL alphabets. I love a good alphabet, and I love when ASL is incorporated in the classroom as much as possible, because I think deaf and hard of hearing students need to see that and feel that inclusion. And I also think ASL should just be taught nationwide. That I don't know why we're not teaching that. But I think everyone would benefit from knowing ASL, even though I like being able to use it to like secretly talk to my friends in public. But anything where ASL is included, I am a big fan. My alphabet that I have up is an ASL alphabet, and I use ASL in my teaching fairly often. So anything that involves sign language, big fan of that. Number two, when classroom libraries are organized by genre. This is an older way. I haven't seen a ton of libraries organized by reading level. I have seen a few though, still in 2025, which is shocking to me, especially as someone who is a reading specialist and versed in the science of reading. But I have seen where they're like organized by levels, and no, not when they're organized by genre. I think that's much better because that's how it is in. I mean, with like uh, Dewey Decimal System. I know fiction books are by like author's last name, but that's much closer to how books are organized in real life. Like in libraries and in bookstores, they're organized by genre and then like author's last name. And so I think when you organize books that way instead of by reading level, it's way more helpful. And then it also allows kids to learn how to pick books that they can actually read. All right, next one, centers and rotations. I'm a fan of centers and rotations. This is falling out of style. I see a shift in classroom now, more back towards like whole group learning, class-wide learning, and it has a new name now. I don't know what the new name. The pendulum of education swings back and forth all the time. I graduated from college when it was at the height of like centers as much as possible, do a 5-minute lesson and then kick them out to their centers. We're swinging back towards more whole group learning now, whole class learning. I'm sure in the next 5 years, it's going to start swinging back to centers again. I am a fan of centers when they are implemented with good classroom management. If your class does not have a solid management system in place, yeah, you're going to struggle. But when you have kids who follow the expectations and the centers are set up for them to actually like investigate and do things, I think they're very useful. And I also think it is a good differentiation tool so that you can have your high flyers working on some more advanced stuff, whereas your lower achieving students can get the intervention and the supports they need. Plus, it's not direct instruction time, so that is a great way to utilize times when kids are getting pulled out and maybe you can't teach core content. I think centers and stations are a really good way to handle a lot of issues, but I'm seeing a shift away from that, and that makes me kind of sad. And then my last one, again, this is not new, but flexible seating. And I know flexible seating has been around for what seems like forever. However, as someone who very rarely can sit still through PDs and just does, I like to have my options, and I know kids do as well. I love the idea of flexible seating, especially in combination with like centers and rotations. Um, I don't really have flexible seating in my classroom currently. I would love to get flexible seating. I have like 2 gray Adirondack chairs, and then I do have on my Amazon wish list some like floor cushions as well, which would be great. But I have always been a teacher who's like, you can sit wherever you want. I'll actually I'll put a picture in here. I have a picture of one student. I think it was my second year teaching. Yeah, it was my second year teaching, and I told them like, hey, you can take the math test wherever you want in the room, as long as you can't see anyone else's paper, you're fine. And one of my kids took a stability ball and put it under the standing table and was like laying, like he like laid over this. I just have a picture in, and he took his whole math test like that. And I'm like, you know what? You do you, friend. You do you. So I've always been a big proponent of flexible seating, and I think that it is very helpful and can be very useful when implemented well. Again, that is in combination with like management and kids who can handle it and setting up your class so that kids can handle the flexible seating. But I lost my train of thought. Okay. Anyway, those are just my opinions about 4 things I love, 4 things I don't love. I am working on another video I will upload. I don't know when because I'm still gathering information for it. But in my gathering of information, please down in the comments drop your education hot takes. Even if you're not a teacher, I want to know your education hot take. And I'm not talking about like teachers are overworked or teachers don't get paid enough or like American education is struggling. Duh. I want I want your education hot takes about whatever you think is relevant and whether you think is completely out there or not. I have some I'm already working through, but drop yours in the comments and I will go through them in a future video because I think that sounds like a great time. But thank you for joining. Classroom setup will resume. I've hit a little bit of a lull just in like getting materials sorted, and then I still don't have my computer from tech, so I'm kind of at a standstill for now until I can start printing stuff, and that's when I can start getting bulletin boards done. So classroom setup will resume as soon as I can. Thank you for being patient with that. And then if you would like to donate to my classroom, no pressure, but if you feel generous and would like to donate something to my classroom, link to my Amazon wish list down in the description box. You guys are awesome, and I will see you in the next one.